Alright, the BHL Portugal adventures have wrapped up, it was an absolutely delightful time, and as promised, I am now here to give my thoughts on the latest MCU film, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. A film that I was extremely excited for, of course partially based on some of the crazy cameo rumors, but more so based on the idea of the multiverse in the MCU, and what creative, wacky stuff could be done with that. So, now that the film's been out for like 3 weeks, let's talk about it with full spoilers. Okay, this review is gonna be a little weird. Strange, one could say. Because I actually already wrote and recorded a full review for this film that I have now completely scrapped. I'm starting over this review because I saw this film for a second time in the cinema and actually felt pretty differently about it. Not insanely different, but definitely different enough for me to want to rewrite this review. If you want my initial thoughts on the film, you can check out the latest Poorly Planned podcast episode we did about it. I still think it's also a pretty fun discussion. But initially, I was pretty disappointed with this movie. I liked it, generally, like I thought it was an entertaining enough watch, but I had a lot of problems with the dialogue, with some character motivations, and with just how various parts of the film played out. And while some of those complaints remain, on the second viewing, I found myself having a much better time with this film. The main thing that stood out to me on the second viewing was how creative this movie is, and how many memorable sequences it has. There really isn't any dead air in this movie. I remembered from my first viewing that the first 20 minutes of this movie were awful, and it only really picks up once the multiverse traveling starts. But rewatching it, that isn't really the case. There are actually only 2 scenes in that first 20 minutes that I think are awful, and the rest is actually pretty fantastic. Wanda and Steven's first conversation I don't think is great, and Wanda coming to confront Steven at Camartage. I stand by that those moments are bad. The green screen in that Camartage scene is awful. Some of Elizabeth Olsen's over-the-top villain acting, where she speaks very slowly and then whispers a bit, I found that kind of cringeworthy still. And the dialogue is pretty subpar in those scenes, especially some very bad exposition. Also seen in that opening scene with America Chavez saying, "We're friends, you're killing me." But besides that, those first 20 minutes are pretty damn fun. That opening scene, while it does kind of throw you into it pretty abruptly, is pretty exciting. The octopus fight is fun and ends with a delightfully disgusting eye pulling out. Wong and Strange are pretty fun together, and the rest of Wanda's attack on Camartage is excellent. And that's where we start to see more of that creativity. Her having to fight against Steven's powers that we've seen in the MCU so far, with mind-bending visuals and mirror dimensions, which leads to fun horror elements like her crawling through reflections. That stuff is fantastic, and I'd totally forgotten about it in my initial review. And I really like the horror direction this film took in general, which comes from the very obvious vision of Sam Raimi. This movie does feel, for the most part, like Sam Raimi was given creative control, especially over specific sequences. The camera movements with the zooms and the tilts and the over-the-top B horror movie style that a lot of the film and the action sequences have, the POV shot of the damned souls attacking Christine, the cheesy horror movie one-liners like "Go back to hell," Wanda basically becoming a horror movie monster chasing them through the tunnel. All of that is a lot of fun and feels more like a creative vision. We haven't had the MCU dipping into another genre for a little bit, I feel. They used to do it more often. And even though I don't love horror or jump scares personally, I was a big fan of how creative this was. Also, even outside the cheesy, over-the-top horror parody kind of thing, the Sam Raimi feel to certain scenes, like Wanda dreamwalking for the first time, and the guitar riff that comes in when Strange takes control of the demons, and just the idea of Doctor Strange fighting in the finale through a disgusting Doctor Strange corpse, accompanied by demons. It's a lot of fun. It's a delightful style for this kind of film. Quick reminder here that if you're enjoying this video, drop a like, subscribe, hit the bell button, and comment your thoughts on Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness down below. Also, after the video, check out my podcast, the Poorly Planned Podcast. We talk movies, TV shows, it's a good time. Alright, back to the video. I also really enjoyed the universes we did go to, especially the Illuminati one. This goofy, almost like a 60s type of futuristic weird world was fun, and reminded me of Star Trek or Doctor Who or maybe even Futurama sort of vibe. The visual effects are generally fantastic in this movie. The transition between universes scene is definitely one of the highlights, and there are other creative points in this movie like the music note fight scene that feel a bit random. Like, why did they both agree to do this music note fight at the same time? But it's so fun and weird and just delightful. That feels like a weird Doctor Strange thing to do. Fight someone with musical notes. I love that. Speaking of music, lots of fun musical cues in this. The Doctor Strange theme from the 2016 movie coming into play at times, the WandaVision theme signaling her entrance into the film, and of course the 90s X-Men theme when a certain professor shows up. Speaking of which, let's talk about Illuminati and cameos in general. So obviously this film did not have as many cameos as there were rumored to be, but that's sort of what I was expecting going in. I mean, by the end people were expecting Batman and Godzilla and Buzz Lightyear to show up in this film. I knew there was no way it would have everything that was rumored. Did I expect some more? Sure, but I'm not going to take any points off the film for that, since that's out of its control. That's just internet hype. And more cameos wouldn't by any means have necessarily made the movie better just by being there. The ones that we did get were pretty fun. I mean, Maria Rambeau as Captain Marvel is fine. Captain Carter was fun to see in live action. Great to see Peggy in live action back in the MCU as well. It was fun to see John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic, though maybe this is just because I've watched so much of The Office and seen lots of Krasinski interviews, or rather watched The Office lots of times. I kinda just saw John Krasinski in a superhero suit, more so than the actual character, but still, a fun nod to an ongoing fan casting wish. Seeing Professor X in the MCU was pretty nuts, interacting with Doctor Strange, talking about Thanos. Crazy. After No Way Home, I do have to say, I feel like these moments aren't having the same effect on me, to be honest. It's almost like a sensory overload now with these cool moments that we thought we'd never see. But still, obviously, a very exciting and cool moment. And I'm not gonna lie, as silly as it sounds, the one that genuinely got the biggest reaction out of me was Black Bolt. Pardon me. Blackagar Boltagon. I kinda gasped/laughed when he showed up, just because for so long the MCU shows were detached from the MCU movies, and now they have started crossing over, but I never ever thought they'd revisit the absolute worst thing the MCU has ever done. And as one of the 3 people who actually sat through that whole season of Inhumans, I felt almost validated seeing the same Black Bolt show up again. That was hilarious, and in a weird way, kind of awesome. Then their fight with Wanda, I love the brutality of it. Not crazy about a couple of lines, but we'll get to that. And I thought it was a bit dumb that Captain Carter survived longer than Mr. Fantastic or Black Bolt. Like Wanda could basically just turn her head into a balloon that explodes if she wanted to, but whatever. It was an exciting, wild scene that finally showed what Wanda is capable of if she doesn't hold back. It added to that horror element of the film. Yeah, it was nuts. What do you want me to say? Okay, now we've talked through a bunch of stuff that I liked, some of it that I really started to appreciate the second time around. Now it's time to talk about stuff that I still didn't like, and one of those would be the dialogue. I gave more of a pass to some of it the second time around, because it is a ridiculous, intentionally goofy, campy movie, so goofy, campy dialogue isn't necessarily a bad thing in a certain context. Again, the go back to hell one-liner, great, kick that witch's ass, fits perfectly, but it's when the movie tries to get serious and is clearly trying to do an unironic scene between characters, and the dialogue is still bad and really cheesy, that it ends up feeling a bit cringy. A couple of the genuine lines made my skin crawl a little bit. For example, some of the Christine Strange dialogue, or some of the exchanges between Strange and America. And the 2 moments that really got me were during the Illuminati scene. Particularly, Mr. Fantastic saying Black Bolt can kill you with a whisper from his mouth. No one would ever say with a whisper from his mouth. That is not how humans talk. It was the most forced, awkward, stilted way of letting Wanda do a horror movie one-liner. And then in a similar way, the I can do this all day bit was set up by Wanda saying some line like, aren't you tired? Or haven't you had enough? Which she would never stop and say in that situation. And again, it just ruins that moment because it feels so manufactured and awkward. Also, yeah, Wanda's little monologue about being reasonable. It's the dialogue, the delivery, and the green screen. That whole moment was kind of cringy in my opinion. I'd like to say though, there are some pretty great moments of acting from Elizabeth Olsen as Wanda later on in the film, but early on, her over-the-top villain stuff wasn't great. Also, let's really quick talk about Wanda. This is not my script, just quick improv because I realized I wanted to talk about this. First time around in my review, I said I thought it was interesting conceptually to make Wanda the villain. This character that we followed as a hero through movies and TV shows in the MCU for years now being a villain. It's a great way of adding more depth and investment into a villain, which is something the MCU has struggled with in the past, and in kind of a unique way that only the MCU could do, since we've had these characters that we followed for so long through this network of films. It's a pretty cool idea, but I didn't like it because it felt very rushed and like a sharp turn into villainy from where we left her in WandaVision, and it kind of goes against everything she learned in WandaVision. Like in WandaVision, she learned, I can't have everything I want because it comes at the expense of other people, so I'm shutting down the Hex and going off and, learning more stuff about magic and whatnot. And in this movie, she's immediately like, I want to have what I want to have, and it doesn't matter if it comes at the expense of other people. And I thought, well, that's a dumb turn, very sharply. However, I had missed a critical piece of information. I didn't really catch in the movie that they do very explicitly mention that the Darkhold has corrupted her, and it's not our Wanda anymore. There's literally a line of dialogue where they say, like, it's not our Wanda. It's kind of like the ring from Lord of the Rings, or the locket from Harry Potter, or whatever. It's a bad magical artifact that has now corrupted a character we know. And that makes it make a lot more sense why she is this way. Does it still feel a little bit strange? Didn't even try to do that. Us having left her as this protagonist who we were following, and now she's basically just crazy and won't listen to reason, and she's murdering people and torturing children. Yeah, it feels a little bit weird, and it removes a bit of the nuance from the character and sort of makes it more of a basic thing that then at the end she learns a very, predictable lesson, which I feel like is similar enough to the one she already learned in WandaVision. But I didn't dislike it as much because there is an explanation for it in the film, technically. And that actually made the film easier to settle into and watch and get behind, because the whole time I wasn't thinking, well, why is Wanda literally a like insane murderous villain now. Because, you know, there is an explanation for it. So, overall, those are my thoughts on Wanda, I guess. Cool idea, not crazy about all of it, but worked much better the second time around because I understood how that character had ended up there more. Anyway, moving on. Also, random note here, I never want to hate on Wong, because I love Wong. He is truly delightful. But in this movie, I don't know if it was how he was directed, or if it was reshoots, or weird editing, or something, but his performance feels way off. There's a part where he's talking to Wanda, like giving her some speech or talking to, and how he delivers the line, "Fortify your minds," during the Camartage attack, is so hilariously confusing and out of place feeling. Also, not gonna lie, I hated the mid-credit scene. You know, memes like this, which are funny, but if you were to take them seriously, you'd be like, well, you know, the characters have some significance or tie into some other film or something interesting. This was literally just this meme brought to life. There wasn't anything subtle or like teasing about it. It was just like, here's one more minute of the movie, picking up right where the film ended, even though it ended on a cliffhanger. And here's this character, and this all feels very random. Why is Strange on board right away? You don't care. Alright, bye. I saw this film with a non-MCU fan, and yeah, there was no explaining it or defending it. They're like, what was that about? I was like, I have no idea. Couldn't tell you. Alright, now we've talked about the movie, I want to talk about why did I enjoy this movie more the second time around. I think it comes down to a few factors. 1, a couple of minor details that I mentioned before, like the Wanda thing. 2, less expectations and more of an idea of what the film was. Even though I felt like I didn't let the expectations of cameos and lots of cool universes and all that impact my first viewing of the film, I think it might have, because I feel I may have been more impatient with the stuff leading up to the multiverse traveling, because I was hoping for more multiverse stuff. Do I think visiting more universes could have been fun? Yes, for sure. But I feel like having more of an idea of where the film was going to go helped me to appreciate how creative and interesting most scenes are. Like I mentioned, there isn't really a boring scene in this film. It's action-packed and full of creative scenes, and only a couple of exposition scenes stand out as not great. 2, I saw this movie for the first time with a non-MCU fan, someone who knows virtually nothing about the MCU, and viewing it from that perspective, yes, this movie is incomprehensible nonsense. I think there are 2 levels to that. There is the MCU lore that you have to know for this film to work. I can't imagine this movie is really enjoyable if you aren't caught up with WandaVision and Doctor Strange and, you know, probably other Marvel stuff. And secondly, and there's nothing wrong with this really, and I'm going to try to put this in a way that isn't insulting to myself, but this is a nerd movie, and the MCU has become much more nerd movie focused than it was before in my opinion. Now I know you're thinking, oh, congrats, you figured out that the superhero wizard movie is kinda nerdy. Big whoop. But what I mean by that is that before, I felt like anyone could watch Iron Man or The Avengers, or even something a bit nerdier and weirder like Thor or Guardians of the Galaxy, and enjoy it independently of all that, because they were more self-aware and accessible and just fun movies on their own. Now, especially since the concept of the multiverse has been introduced, these movies and shows feel a lot more like specifically movies made for superhero nerds, which for the record, I'm not saying as an insult, I'm a huge superhero nerd, but on a mainstream level, they work less, and having seen most of these movies lately with non-superhero nerds, that shows. There is a definite disconnect there, at least in my experience. They don't enjoy these movies as much, and they more kind of laugh at them or are confused by them. There's the MCU lore, and then there's just a lot of explanation, and they need the magic book to fix this multiverse problem because of this ancient being casting this spell, and it is definitely more lore heavy and less accessible for mainstream audiences in my opinion. And I think that's how I've been viewing these movies for a while now, mainly because I've been seeing them with, you know, non-superhero fans. I know these movies are crazy successful, which obviously means there's mainstream appeal, so maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but they definitely feel more targeted for Marvel fans than the average moviegoer now. Will this start to become a problem for the MCU going forward? That's a topic for another time. But my point with all this was, seeing it for the first time with someone who's not really a nerd for these kinds of movies, it makes how silly and dumb this movie is stand out more and definitely took me out of it a bit. I'm not trying to give that as an excuse or anything, like a movie should stand on its own regardless of who you watch it with, but on the second viewing, just sort of committing to it more and accepting, okay, this movie's gonna be a bit nerdy and goofy with magic artifacts and silly superhero stuff. Let's just go with it. I think it helped me to get more into it and appreciate some of the creative aspects of it more, and it felt more like a complete film. I was able to get more immersed in the film's world, I guess. That does not excuse some of the bad stuff I've mentioned, to be clear. That doesn't just absolve it of all that, and it's not like every movie that's bad when you watch it with one type of friend will be better if you watch it with another. I still think Eternals will be an over-convoluted Wikipedia article of a movie no matter who I watch it with. But for this one in particular, I do think letting myself go along with the nerdy MCU superhero-ness of it more made me enjoy it a lot more. As far as the everyday non-MCU nerd enjoying this though, I can definitely see why they wouldn't. And again, it still definitely has its flaws regardless. And finally, I did see this in 4DX for the second viewing, which if you don't know is this absolutely ridiculous cinema thing where the seats move and they spray you with water and air and have smells and all this wild stuff, and it's truly absurd, and I don't think it improved my viewing experience, but in the interest of full transparency, Who knows? So in conclusion, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness still definitely does have its flaws. My friend Lele made a point saying it feels like the most fan-made movie in the best and worst ways possible, and I can definitely agree with that to some degree. It has a couple of awful scenes in it, and some really bad dialogue at times, and probably didn't exploit the potential of its premise as much as it could. But besides that, it is a really entertaining film. There are very few scenes that aren't either really creative, or interesting, or have something exciting or intriguing going on. Its use of the cheesy, Raimi horror parody style fits very well. It's got some exciting action scenes. The running theme of Strange's happiness is actually pretty interesting. It's one of the most uniquely shot MCU films, and on the whole, it's a lot of fun. If you settle into it being a really nerdy, goofy MCU movie, I think this is a ton of fun. For the average non-MCU fan moviegoer, this might be confusing and kinda cringy and might be hard to get into, but for me, especially on my second viewing, I enjoyed it quite a lot. In my initial review, I gave it a 7.1 out of 10, Now, I'll give Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness a 7.9 out of 10. And here's how my rating system works for those who don't know. And here's where I'd rank it with the other MCU movies and Disney Plus shows. So, those were my thoughts on Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. What did you think of it? And where would you rank it with the other MCU films? Let me know all of your thoughts down below in the comments. While you're at it, be sure to like this video, check out my Instagram and Twitter at BHL_Hudson, my TikTok at BHLHudson, my Letterboxd at RealBHLHudson, check out this podcast that I do with a friend of mine where we talk about movies, TV shows, a bunch of nonsense. It's called The Poorly Planned Podcast, and subscribe for more videos like the one you just watched. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.